Hi, everyone. My name's Claire. I have Jane with me. I'll have her introduce herself in just a second. But we're coming with you today with a really fun conversation for emerging professionals. My name's Claire Petrie. I'm based out of Buffalo, New York. A few fun things about me. I'm the College Relations and Emerging Professionals Director for BNHRA, my local SHRM chapter, on the Emerging Professional Advisory Council for SHRM, and I'm a camp counselor for Empower Camp, which is a local summer camp program in Western New York for young women ages 13 to 18. And Jane and I first met in summer of 2020 when our friend Jeff Palkowski was hosting weekly Zoom meetings for the State Line crew to keep us all connected and encouraged during COVID. So first met Jane there, and then we've been online and Twitter buddies ever since, and both really passionate about supporting EPs and have some fun topics we want to bounce around today we think would be helpful for you. So I kick it over to Jane.
So, hey everybody, I'm Jane Murtaugh, and I'm based out of the Chicago suburbs. Have been teaching at a community college for the past 20 years. Hard to believe that. Did some work in corporate management and HR before that. Started teaching high school. But I need to stop because now you're figuring out how old I am. Met, like Claire said, we met in summer, and it's interesting how we always say, build your network, because Claire has been a guest speaker for some of my classes with her LinkedIn talents and participated in informational interviews. So, even during COVID and during remote times, you can still stay connected and form a great friendship.
Yeah.
One of the things that we wanted to talk to you about tonight was some imposter syndrome and growth mindset and so on. Claire, why don't you go ahead and get us started? You've done some nice blog work with this.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to start with imposter syndrome. Like Jane said, we want to get into growth mindset, vulnerability, comparison, some other things that we've all experienced. I've definitely experienced as a young professional myself. But I think it all kind of stems from that topic of imposter syndrome or imposter complex. So I think of that as kind of that lack of confidence, fear of what if. So if I try this and I fail or doesn't go right, and self-doubt, which can definitely come up as a young professional or as a student, as you're trying to build that credibility, learn new skills and things like that. So I do have a post on my blog. It's just clairepetriehr.com, called Confidence and Imposter Syndrome for Young Professionals. And I broke it down into 3 buckets of what's helped me combat it. And I think we'll have a lot to talk about based on those 3 buckets. We're really excited to bring to you. So the first being having a support system and a network helps you combat imposter syndrome. So like Jade mentioned, if it wasn't for a lot of my online HR community and other HR professionals, and of course, family and friends, if you have them and things, can help you with it. So you have someone to turn to when you have a question or you're not sure, or you need some support or encouragement or some extra resources or things like that. The second being self-care and having like self-care non-negotiables. So for me, I know my non-negotiables are walking my dog, which takes like 20 minutes a day, and journaling like 10 minutes before bed. If those things start to slip where I can feel in my mind, I'm too busy to walk the dog, or I'm too busy to do my journaling for 10 minutes, I know I got to stop and be like, something is going on here. I'm burning myself out. I'm doing too much. I'm not setting, good enough boundaries or something like that. So I highly encourage having just those few ways that are non-negotiables for you to take care of yourself, because it's hard to hold space and take care of others if you're not doing it for yourself. And then the third being always reading, learning, keeping a focus on professional development. So to keep it just high level to kick us off, I can't tell you how many times for me when someone has questioned my credibility or things like that as a young professional. I've gotten questions when I've joined big global corporations, like, how did you get here? How are you qualified to be in this job? Or just being asked in an interview, I see you don't have this experience, so what would you do? And just being able to say that I've watched a course on this, or I've read an article, or I've talked to somebody in my network. So here's what I would do. And then, asking some questions, am I on the right track? Or how does your company do it? Or things like that. But if I didn't have that focus on like learning and professional development, it'd be really hard to combat those moments of imposter syndrome because I wouldn't have a lot to fall back on. So I will stop there. And Jane, I know you work with a lot of students and EPs and you hear about them struggling with these things as well. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I think one of the things that you just really brought up with is by reading and by us, continuing our own professional development and so on. That's all part of realizing we all, whether it's 20, 30 years in a role or being a new emerging professional or a college student, learning never ends. We never stop growing. And one of the things that I have really focused a lot in lately, and the way that Claire and I came up with this idea to make this video is when I said one of my professional development goals for 2022 includes better helping my students navigate that journey from this is why I came to complete this HR certificate program to, oh, I hit a bump or I failed something or I ran into a minefield or it's not a straight line, it's a maze. So how can I better help them through the journey? And like what Claire's talking about is we need to have a growth mindset as opposed to that fixed mindset. So my first stop as I've kind of planned out what I'm going to spend this year focused on, everybody read Carol Dweck's mindset book when it came out in the early 2000s, which then in education, we all started figuring out how do you teach mindset? And that was kind of, what I started with. What I really like about what Carol wrote in her book has to do with, instead of saying, I'm never going to pass a test as a fixed mindset because I can't do it, then make it be the growth mindset as I haven't been able to, I've applied for jobs and haven't received any interview requests yet.
Yeah.
So, throw the yet after it as opposed to I just can't do it. 2021 brought us so many great books with Lindsey Pollak's Recalculating. Angela Champ did that Squiggly line career.
Yeah.
Ruettimann did Betting on You. And one of the things that I love about all of them is all of this has to do with mindset.
Yeah.
It all starts there. You can't recalculate if you haven't started the process and so on. Which then, what are your thoughts on the vulnerability piece of that, Claire?
Yeah. Okay. Well, before we get into vulnerability, because I had a couple things on growth mindset and we think about it so similarly because we did not like prep for this before at all. And I literally wrote down, I love what you said about them or hearing from a student that the path, was like this and they weren't expecting it. Literally was thinking about knowing in advance that things are just not always going to go as planned and that's okay. So just having that or trying to train yourself to kind of reprogram that belief system can really help when things, don't go right. It's okay. It's not like you're going to be panicking every single time. And I wrote down some of that kind of belief system as well. So knowing you'll get better with practice, like the interviews are coming, they just haven't yet. So that mindset is so important to keep you moving forward in those moments of self-doubt and lack of confidence and things like that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
I run into students who, this is kind of like a boutique certificate, I would say. It's not a typical come in freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. This HR management certificate that I developed and work with, I get students that quite diverse in terms of ages, educational backgrounds, and HR experience. So this is not, your traditional 18 to 25-year-old crowd. I think my oldest student was 62. And at that point said, I'm going to get into HR. So talk about a growth mindset that way. Yeah. And it's fascinating because I've learned one of the ways that to kind of help them realize just because you have a diploma doesn't mean you're done. We always have more to learn is to always go back at the beginning of the semester. Why are you here? What is your career goal? And what do you plan to do in HR? So what, if this is the typical career journey, where are you on this? What's your map? How are you going to get there? And they're always so excited about, wow, I can actually put this down on paper and I see the plan. And then the first assignment comes back and I'll see them in the hallway going, she took 5 points off. I thought I did well. What did I do wrong? And to me, that's a conversation that should take place inside the classroom, not with somebody else outside, because then that opens us up to it shows courage to say, I, didn't get the A that I expected. Why did I not get the A? And then the learning that comes from that. So I love everything. I'm all about this growth mindset piece. We can't be so fixed and closed off.
Yeah.
Because, the biggest mistake we make is when we say we're not going to participate because it's impossible and I'll never get there. But then remembering, for me, I can't tell you how many times a year, an academic year, I say the safest place to make a mistake is in the classroom.
Yeah.
So let's learn together, be sponges and learn on the growth piece. Love that part.
Yeah, I love that. So going back into vulnerability, because you just kind of mentioned that anyway. So having the courage in class to be able to say I didn't do as well as I thought I was going to, or something like that. And what's helped for me, because I don't think any of us like being wrong or having to admit that we're wrong, but kind of the phrasing that I've worked on that feels good to me is sharing, like, here's what I do know or what I do think, but I'm not 100% sure. What are your thoughts? Or can you give me feedback? Or I'd love to hear your perspective or learn from you. So just getting comfortable with asking questions has helped as well. So I try to offer what I do know, but then spin it back to, what are your thoughts? Can you give me feedback? And at first, asking to hear someone's thoughts on my work was really scary. But once you find some of that wording that feels good to you, and like I said, you kind of practice, so you get more comfortable stretching yourself with it. It has helped me be more vulnerable and courageous, for sure.
I think if you were to ask any HR professional, including yourself, if I threw this question out to you, what's the number one thing you would say to an emerging HR professional? It probably would go along the lines of, it's okay to not know everything on day one.
Yeah.
And John Thurmond, who's a good friend of Claire's and mine in the, global HR community, and one of the founding members of HR Social Hour, another great way to network. I heard him on one of their podcasts say, you're not going to know everything on day one. It's okay to not know everything on day one, because you have a network that you can learn from.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that vulnerability is realizing it's okay for me to pick up the phone and say, Claire, how do I remember calling you or emailing you and saying, how do I change the title bar on my LinkedIn page?
I remember that.
Feeling so silly for not the banner, I guess is actually what it's called. And feeling so silly that, I need to call Claire and say, how do I do this? Because I can't figure it out. What happened was I got the answer, and now I have a really great banner.
Yeah.
If I hadn't asked, it would still just be that standard one.
Mm-hmm.
So the cool part about being vulnerable is you allow yourself to take that risk. To realize it's okay to not have all the answers, to know where to get them from, to have that network built up.
Mm-hmm.
And we end up being creative. That was another thing we wanted to talk about tonight, was creativity, which comes from vulnerability. So if I'm going to shut myself off and not let myself be vulnerable because I think the world's going to think lesser of me, then not having the courage to ask for help decreases my creativity, which really decreases my ability to learn.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I think things that I've ended up like dreaming up or coming up with, like ideas for new programs, like for being HRA, for example, have come from me asking questions of other people. Like, what would you like to see? What could I change? Or again, just kind of asking those questions has helped me then, be able to create and put out better work that stretched me in terms of creating it and getting that experience, and then also being able to give back to my community and serve them better. So it's an interesting point.
I think I told you it's interesting how, you start on this path of, okay, growth mindset, vulnerability, how do I, get my students to know it's comfortable in my classroom to say I don't know, or to call me and say I don't know. And somehow it led me to Brene Brown,
Mm.
um, who, oh my goodness. I was gifted for Christmas this year her new book, Atlas of the Heart, which she really, you can listen to her TED talk on vulnerability, and she's done a lot of work on shame. But this new book really says, what's the emotions that come from that? And it was from her that I realized, we're the emotional experience that comes from being uncertain during vulnerability, then the courage part of that, the creativity part of that, the shame part of that, the authentic part of that, and it just led me to, when we're not letting ourselves be vulnerable, we're not letting ourselves learn, we're not letting ourselves be risk takers. And I can't have, as an educator, I can't have that in my classroom.
Yeah.
How can I make things be more safe?
Yeah. Yeah. And something else we want to talk about too is growing our expertise. So that goes right into that. Because like you said, you can't learn if you're not asking questions and reaching out to your network and things like that. So the main thing I thought about when you brought up, just how do we grow our expertise? So it's just hard to do in a vacuum, I think was my main thing, which is what we're talking about, networking and asking questions. And it's always a combination in my experience too. So to find what works best for you. So I like a combination of LinkedIn learning, events, Twitter chats, podcasts. So there's so many ways to get that information, but again, kind of the networking that goes along with it. So like when I listen to a podcast with HR Social Hour, I'll find the guests, on LinkedIn and send a connection request note so I can follow the articles that they might share in their feed and things like that. So yeah, it's like once you get started, again, you have to be in that growth mindset, but finding kind of a few different tools that work really well for you, and then how you can kind of engage with your network there as well. So if you do have questions or do want to follow up, those folks are going to be there to help for sure.
Absolutely. And the other thing that, I think I see a lot too are you and I are just natural comparers, and I think that we sometimes as humans just compare ourselves to others when we don't even realize that we're doing that. And I see that a lot in the classroom as well, with growing your expertise, and someone like equating that with perhaps a test score might be higher, or again, another grade might be higher or something.
Yeah.
But realizing that if I've determined, if I like what you had said with HR Social Hour and the HR community as a whole, and some of the podcasts and some of the webinars and things that you and I participate in, realizing I'm here, this is where I want to get, and identifying that network as who are the role models that I can follow along the way, because I can grow my expertise through that. It's made me realize mentoring is very important. And informational interviews are even more important, perhaps, because informational interviews create that safe space. It's not a job interview. I don't have anything on the line as a student or an emerging professional to have a 30 to 45-minute chat with an HR professional. I don't have anything on the line except my ability to learn and grow my expertise. I don't have to compare it as, oh, Claire got the job offer, I didn't. I can take that comparison piece away and inside network, and it helps me go get what I'm after.
Yeah. I love that so much. I definitely get stuck in the comparison trap too. And I've realized more recently, because again, when you can identify it, for me, when I start comparing, it's keeping me from taking action. So it's slowing my ability to get to where I want to go the more I dwell and think about how other people are doing it. So yeah, for me, I've definitely had to find a focus on knowing that, we're all just unique and no one does it like me. I can learn from those other people, like you said, but not let it stop me thinking that, like I started my career coaching business a year ago.
That's so exciting. That's so
Thank
exciting.
you. Yeah. And there's so many other career coaches out there, but we're all so different. So yeah, you doing what I can instead of comparing to be like, that's where I would love to be in like 5 to 10 years, and taking some of those pieces, but also utilizing my special skills and strengths at the same time. So yeah, that can be hard, but just don't stay there. Like you said, try to talk to somebody about it or learn something new. Again, that, yeah, keeping that focus on having a support system, having a network, professional development and learning can help you in those moments. I think comparison is very closely tight knit with the imposter syndrome for sure. Because when you compare, yeah, you get that lack of confidence and self-doubt starts creeping in. So
And one of the things that I admire so much about what you're doing with coaching is, you and I share a passion for helping the emerging professional launch, enhance their career, and both throw some, professional development into that. So for me, one of the things that I've gained from you and just watching what you're doing with LinkedIn was making sure that I bring you into the class with how do I get a stronger LinkedIn profile? And I have had someone come into the class with not so much how do I get my resume to beat an ATS, but how should my resume be set up and so on? How do I build my network? How do I get those mentoring, those opportunities and so on? And I think that then also helps me realize that I have the connections. It's okay to be vulnerable and see that I can use that help. And we all, need to learn. My comparisons then become, here's where I was, but here's where I am now.
Yeah.
In terms of I'm moving along that journey that gets me to the goal that I'm actually after. One of the things I've started doing in the classroom is, instead of just a group presentation, doing individual ones as well. Because the reality is, it's you once you're outside the classroom.
Yeah.
It is your job search. It is your interview. It's your new hire program. It's your job performance. It's, your career. So I need to be the best me, and that best me, it's okay to be vulnerable.
Yes.
It's okay to make those mistakes and learn from them, and then realize that I have the connection of that HR network behind me.
Yes.
One of the things that I have hanging in my kitchen and have heard every, I have 2 children, husband, and so on. And I've heard all 4 of us mention during different periods of time. What's hanging in our kitchen is a sign that says, not to spoil the ending, but everything's going to be okay. And we refer back to that. Like sometimes when you're headed into, a risk-taking meeting or appointment or something, you just kind of tap it with, it's going to be all right. This may be a setback, but I can move forward from this.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. And I know, I could get on my soapbox about LinkedIn, and we're not here to talk about LinkedIn, but the one thing I want to mention about LinkedIn, because it does go hand in hand with that mindset, is most of the clients and EPs I work with are usually stuck in the thought of, especially when they're reaching out to maybe a guest that was on the HR Social Hour podcast, or just someone that they perceive as more experienced or more whatever than they are, that those thoughts creep in. They're very common, of, this person's not going to want to hear from me. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I'm bothering them? That's so common. And I'm always working with people on, like, that's just a thought. You literally can't break anything with LinkedIn. Like you said, like, just take the risk. If someone replies and gives you feedback on your connection request note, then just take it. But you have to practice and put yourself out there in order to get comfortable and get that much closer, like you said, to where you want to go. So sometimes you got to work on those thoughts too, and kind of where they come from, and take that risk to just reach out, because it will get you closer to that next step for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's so much growth that we can do. If you circle back to where you started with imposter syndrome and not thinking we're good enough to be a part of that HR community, or to get that career, that pass that test, or get that interview, or get that job, it comes from those connections. It comes from sitting back pre-COVID days, when we used to walk into those events and sit at a table, we never know who anybody was, and saying, "Hi, I'm Jane Murtaugh," and starting that conversation. And then that person might have a job.
Yeah.
Or know someone that has a job.
Yeah.
or be Claire Petrie that I can call and say, can you help me with my banner?
Yeah.
So
No, absolutely.
be authentic, be you. It's okay.
Mhm. Yeah. And I wanted to, something else that you made me think of with taking risks, similar to kind of what I say with my clients on like, that's just a thought, like they don't want to hear from me. Like we can correct that and choose a more intentional, like positive thought instead. Similarly, I like to ask the clients and EPs I'm working with, like how they define risk, because they might think something's really risky, but they're already thinking like too far down the line. Like I talk to a lot of people that are like, well, if I got this job, it would really change my life in XYZ ways. And I'm like, just apply. You can decline the offer in 3 months from now. Like, we're not even there. Don't like self-select out and like, I guess, try to like figure out what that risk would be in the beginning. Because I'll say a lot of the cool opportunities I got in my career, I just said, yeah, sure, let me talk to that person. And it became something really awesome that I didn't anticipate. So yeah, don't think too far ahead. And yeah, if you haven't even interviewed for something yet, don't start thinking about what it could be like.
It's like, don't create the problem that doesn't exist. Don't worry about the problem that doesn't exist.
That's a good point. Yeah, don't spend your energy worrying on something that's not right there in front of you.
That's something I have to remind myself of, periodically myself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Oh, what else do we got? What else is on your list?
Other things on my list are Laurie Ruettimann in her Betting on You book brought back the we are not our careers.
Yeah.
The career is not me. The job is not me. I am my person, which is one of the reasons why I love in your blog that you did on imposter syndrome. It's, not only making connections with others, but remembering yourself as well and the self-care piece of us. One of the things that Laurie brought kind of like back to the forefront in that book was that concept of pre-mortem, which says pause, reflect before you do something, and then what could go wrong, what might go wrong, and then kind of working backward, clarify expectations. What's your vision board? How am I going to better manage my time and energy? And I think about that a lot when I'm perhaps stressed and worried, and maybe not doing my best quality work because I haven't done the pre-mortem. Maybe it was a bigger project than I thought it was going to be. And then you don't deliver your best effort. And then you're all the way back to the start of that feeling of being vulnerable and what everybody else is thinking about me. So pre-mortem, I think, is a nice tool that I try to make sure now that I spend time talking about in the classroom. I had Laurie come in as a guest speaker last semester to students. And that's one of the things that they absolutely loved.
Yeah.
Was, oh, wait, this is going to be okay because I stopped and took a look at it and then planned my energy and time as needed to be. So I think that's a nice tool for all of us to put in our little career toolbox.
Yeah, that's a really good tool. I still have to separate my self-worth from my job. It is a lifelong journey, I feel like, for some of us. You always got to work on that mindset.
And COVID kind of blurred that a little bit. In this house, husband's upstairs, I'm on the first floor. You could work 24 hours a day. So it's like you said, you have to leave to walk the dog. You have to leave to exercise. One of the things that I found very enjoyable now is treadmilling, listening to podcasts.
Love it.
And it's been fun to go back. Like that HR Social Hour podcast just recently celebrated 4 years. It's been fun for me to go back to episodes 0. I think you're like 25 or something, or 10. But hearing like the history of like filling in the blanks of, not knowing people from the past. So it's another way to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
And take care of yourself at the same time.
Yeah. No, this has been so fun. Okay. So we covered imposter syndrome, growth mindset, vulnerability, growing your expertise, ways to do that and focus on that. And yeah, taking risks. So many good things. Yep. Yeah. I encourage anyone who here's this. Obviously, as any follow-up questions or wants extra resources, feel free to send us a note. Like Jane said, there's plenty of books and articles and podcasts and other things, and in our perspectives, I would be happy to share with you. I think we each had a couple things we wanted to plug too before we closed. Some of you may know I do have an HR Emerging Professional Learning Series currently running for 2022. Every month we're doing a different 101 type topic. Yesterday we just had Employee Engagement and Retention 101. In March we have Employee and Labor Relations. April we have Total Rewards. And May, we have learning and development. So I'm planned through May right now, only $5 on Zoom. So if you are looking to transition into the HR field, are a student, or just have a couple years of experience looking to explore maybe some other areas in HR, please come hop on Zoom with me. I host all the events. You'll meet different HR pros, be able to network and ask questions. So feel free to send me a note if you're interested in that, and I'll send you the link. And second thing I wanted to plug again for Empower Camp. So we're a summer camp program in Western New York for young women ages 13 to 18. We are a traditional summer camp in the sense we do fun things like crafts and swimming and things like that. But our Empower Camp twist are the chats that the counselors have with the girls on things like self-worth, self-respect, self-confidence, things like that. So those conversations I clearly love having. We touched on a lot of those things today, but starting with that earlier population, our community age 13 to 18. So anyway, summer camp registration is open for campers, and we're still looking for a few more counselors for our program in Western New York as well. So Jane, what do you want to share with everybody?
I think I would say if you are listening and are an emerging professional or an HR professional and would like an opportunity to talk to either other students that are in HR from the Chicagoland area, or wanted to talk to students as an HR professional, want to volunteer your time, please reach out. Perhaps guest speak, however you want to do it. I think we all just learn from each other regardless of how long we've been in HR.
Yeah.
So would very much welcome that. And then I would just encourage everybody to, look for those links on, and Claire, perhaps we could link in podcasts to follow, blogs to follow, to help emerging professionals find those HR social hours, punk rock HR, some of those other great podcasts that are out there. My network really took off when I just kind of realized these, podcasts are out there and Twitter chats are out there, and just kind of watched it for a couple of weeks before I became vulnerable myself and jumped in. And I will tell you, it's been awesome for my career. That's great.
Yeah. Oh, so glad you mentioned that too. I'll definitely put some links in the YouTube notes. I might link as well. I have a quick 12-minute video of my story, because to your point, when I started using social media, my career also took off. So I love sharing that little snippet of how that happened, because it's definitely possible for everybody to jump in and get involved.
And then I think one more thing I would say is, if you're on Twitter, follow #HR community, because that is a global community of, I don't even know how many HR professionals. That's one of the great ways that I stay connected. So it's a great way to get updated.
Yeah. All right, good. How can people find you after they watch today?
So I am on Twitter, Murtaugh J. Let me spell that. It's Murtaugh. And then my Twitter handle is Murtaugh J. And you'll also find me on LinkedIn at Jane Murtaugh.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm on Twitter as well. I'm _STR Claire. Why are these all so complicated? But again, my website is just clairepetriehr.com, and you can find my LinkedIn, Twitter, and everything linked right on my website, as well as the Impostor Syndrome blog that we mentioned too. So yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Jane, for doing this with me. This was like an idea that just came out of the DMs, because we both are always just hearing different things from our networks about these topics, and we're passionate about, sharing and learning as well. So this was fun.
Yep. That's another great example of, the connection that we have. So absolutely enjoyed it.
All right. Awesome. Well, I'll see you again soon.
All right,
and
everybody.
have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Claire.